Welcome to the Professional Muslim Women Podcast, a place for working Muslim women to share their stories, struggles, triumphs, and lessons learned along the way in pursuit of their careers. I'm Dr. Kali Hussein.
And I'm Dr. Hani Ahmed. And in this podcast, we bring inspirational, trailblazing, successful, and fulfilled professional Muslim women to you.
Get ready to be inspired and learn how you can forge your own path as well. Welcome to the Professional Muslim Women Podcast. This is Dr. Kali Hussein. Today, we have Fatima Hassan Ali. She's a Harvard Law grad, previously went to Stanford for undergrad. Fatima is based in Houston, Texas, and practices litigation at a law firm. And prior to that, she clerked for a federal judge. Welcome to the show, Fatima.
Hi, Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you. Thank you for being with us today. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you so much for the invitation. I'm very excited for our conversation.
Wonderful, wonderful. All right, let's get started. Do you want to tell us a little bit about your experience and how you started on your journey into law?
Absolutely. So I always knew that I wanted to be in a profession that had an impact in people's lives. I grew up, the daughter and an immigrant from Somalia. So my parents are from Somalia. I was born in Saudi Arabia, but mostly raised in Houston, Texas. And for me, some of the earliest memories, was just being very much aware of the fact that we came to this country because circumstances in my parents' country was not ideal. There was war, and not just in Somalia, but also in Bosnia and Iraq. I watched probably a little too much of CNN as a kid, just seeing all of those images and then kind of growing up, seeing the devastation and impact of HIV and AIDS in sub-Saharan Africa and different famines and different humanitarian crises. I just wanted to be part of the world that responded to that type of suffering. For that reason, I thought that going to medical school would be a way to achieve that. And so when I was looking into what I wanted to do with my life, I knew that I wanted potentially to be in the biology world. And I started out at Stanford and I studied human biology, which just was a wonderful mix of public health and hard sciences and statistics and psychology and sociology, anthropology. It was just like a mix of many different fields. And I really thrived in those interdisciplinary classes. And mindset, like you got to identify a problem, but it takes many different types of interventions to really tackle out the problem. And once I sort of realized that, I started to shift away from my desire to be in the medical response aspect and more trying to be in the seat of people who analyze problems, kind of figure out what the different levers are, and then try and assemble the best teams to do that. And it was very nebulous to me until I met some people when I was working at the United Nations in Geneva who I felt were real change agents, and they were diplomats and had that.
Can you tell us a little bit about how you got into that World Health Organization program? At what stage in your journey were you? Was this in college?
So I graduated from Stanford in 2009 into a horrible job market. And also compounded by the fact that I didn't know what I wanted to do. And at Stanford, I was lucky enough to have received a postgraduate fellowship that had an international bent. And so I spent about 2 months after trying to find different organizations that would, potentially host someone just out of college. And that's how I got linked with the UN Population Fund in Geneva.
Right. So you graduated with a biology degree?
I did. I graduated with a degree in human biology, which was, the hard sciences, and then also the anthropology and sociology.
That's very interesting. So it's possible to start off with a biology degree and end up in law.
Absolutely.
Wonderful.
My pathway to law school was very
tortuous,
kind of winding, but it was very illuminating, right? Like I didn't know how to get to what I wanted, but I didn't know the pathway, but I knew what I wanted to do, right? Like in 2009, who were my heroes then? Barack, Michelle Obama. I was looking at people who headed the World Health Organization, who headed the UN. People like Kofi Annan always stood out to me, Nelson Mandela. It's not a coincidence that all these people are Black. It was always looking at who are the people who are driving change in this world, who I just so much not idolize, but respect and look up to. And how did they get to where they were?
And somewhat you identify with someone that looks like you.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Another one is Hillary Clinton. She's a woman, and I really identified with the fact that she overcame a lot to get to where she was in terms of just combating people underestimating her because of her gender. So I spent a lot of time reading people's bios and trying to understand the different ways they went about kind of pursuing change. Like you've got people who do consulting and then end up in politics. You have people who do very well as businessmen and women and end up in politics. You have people who never go into fields, that are lucrative and can make them money, but end up doing the work, whatever way that work means. Like if it's community organizing, if it's being a teacher, and they make a lot of change.
Right.
So, I had a good time when I was trying to figure out what my path would be to kind of reflect on that. Of course, the big pressure was, my family just kind of being like, what is it that you want to do? You've just taken human biology and all these pre-med courses and you're studying for the MCATs. Like, what are you doing? Just go to med school. But during that time in Geneva, I just was so impressed with people who knew the way to talk, knew the way to walk, and just kind of wanted a little bit of that kind of training. And really a very nice woman kind of took me aside, and she had a background in the law. And another woman who was a professor at the Stanford Law School kind of was my mentor during this period. I had a political science professor who was my mentor as well, and another professor of medicine at Stanford who just were very supportive as I tried to figure out what my future would look like. I made the decision to go to law school, in a way, not having talked to people who were my age and going through that process, or who actually were law students or who were young attorneys. Like I didn't talk to any of those people. In retrospect, I'm kind of like, how did I make this decision without talking to people? But I just kind of was, very hell-bent on making my path for myself. And I guess very much want to leave a mark on this world. And I knew that in order to do so, I needed to get some things under my belt. Do you need to go to law school to do any of these things? Absolutely not. But I think what it did meet is my, got a talent in reading and writing and understanding what the law or what a particular argument could be most persuasive. And in order to really not just improve that, but in order to have a profession and pay your bills, it's a good career option.
Wonderful.
So that's how I ended up in law school.
Okay. So tell us about law school. How did you end up at Harvard Law when it was a final or last minute decision?
So I took 2 years between undergrad and law school where I studied for the LSAT and I worked, got some experience in the real world, did research back at Stanford after I did a year with the United Nations in Geneva. Just really tried to understand the whole process of getting into law school. I perfected my admissions essay and my personal statement. There was something called a diversity personal statement, which I don't think that a lot of people understood or knew was an option to supplement your application. And so I was very keen on making those two pieces of writing very strong so that these schools understood and took my candidacy seriously, right? To be candid, it wasn't like I was coming in with a 4-point GPA. I didn't study history. I didn't study, and not to minimize any of those majors. It was a different game being a pre-med student at Stanford. And so to make up for my grades, I needed to do well on the LSAT and I needed to do well on my essays.
To clarify, you didn't have a perfect GPA and the perfect track record to make it into Harvard Law.
No.
I just want to emphasize that for any of our younger audiences, who say it may be an impossibility, but there are other routes, correct?
Absolutely. especially at a place like Harvard, where they have a large class size. So when you have 650, 660 people coming in, you can accept who you want
Right.
because you're always going to have a solid number of candidates with 4.0s and 180 LSATs. What that made me realize was that I needed to persuade them to take a chance on someone who
Right.
didn't have those 4.0s because they had a number of applicants from all over the country and world who did have wonderful statistics or numerical, metric of achievement. That was not to me the biggest barrier. To be honest, I think I had a very healthy sense of confidence when I was going through the application process. Not that I was like arrogant, but I just was very confident in the fact that I am someone who's going to do good things in this world. And I want people to take that chance on me and I won't prove them wrong. Have some faith in me and I'll prove you right. I think part of that is also understanding that your tribe supports you. So I had really good letters of recommendations from people that I worked very closely with when I was an undergrad and after. And, when you have that kind of support network, you really do feel like you can apply for anything. And so one of my sincerest, I think, pieces of advice is make sure that you are connecting with your professors, that your professors know what your goals are, your employers know what your goals are. Ask them for advice. People will help steer you in the right direction. And I'm just so grateful that I have had so many wonderful mentors and teachers in my life.
That's very, very important. That's a note that I just took right now is the importance of mentorship. These are long, long journeys. I can say the same thing for medicine, as you just said, for law. It's a long journey with multiple steps. I think it's very important, and I completely agree with what you just said, is to continue to grow that network of your supporters.
Yes, absolutely. I think one of the things that I need to do now, kind of looking at my 10-year reunion coming up, is going back to some of those people, giving them kind of an update on where their investment in me kind of paid off, right? And so always circling back and kind of letting people know how you're doing is a beautiful thing too.
That's actually a really, really good point, and something I'm personally very bad at. I don't think I've ever done any reunions from high school onwards, but I will take that piece of advice and reach out.
Absolutely. And it's good because, these are people I really love, right? And it's always a fun conversation. So get at it, honey.
Yeah, I sure will. I sure will. Okay, so now we've gone through how you kind of basically made the case. You lawyered your way into Harvard.
I think that's absolutely correct, right?
Oh my, I've always wanted to say that. That's awesome. You lawyered your way into Harvard Law School after being a pre-med.
Yes.
That's amazing. I don't think we've had this conversation before. This is amazing. I'm so glad we're recording this.
I just want to drop here that 2 extremely successful graduates of HLS also lawyered their way into law school. Very different from me, but men who did not get admitted into the school straight up and then went and basically were on campus the first day of school and were there to take anyone's seat if they didn't show up for their class that first year.
Who was that?
I can't recall his name, but one of the buildings at the law school is named after him now because he became an extremely successful private equity titan in New York City. He's very candid about the fact that he didn't let their no stop him, that very respectfully, he went to the campus before the first day and was like, whoever doesn't show up, I'm here to take their seat,
That's amazing.
Yeah. So, yes. And another piece of advice, like I have a friend who graduated from Stanford Medical School and was initially denied admittance into Stanford Medical School. And she did not take their no to be the end of the conversation.
Yep.
She just said, this will be a start of a conversation. And she got in. Don't take no for an answer necessarily.
That brings up a very good point. There's a book that I recently read. It's a negotiation book called Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss. He's I think an FBI negotiator. And one of the things he talks about in negotiations is no is the beginning of the negotiation. It's not the end. No does not mean the end. If you got a no, that means the conversation is still ongoing, right? They responded.
Right. And I guess I should make a footnote here that we're talking about it in the professional realm.
Yes.
Never, ever, ever should you apply this attitude in a personal relationship.
In a personal relationship, yes. Good catch. See, there she goes lawyering again.
I'm all about risk mitigation.
Oh, wonderful. All right. So now you've lawyered your way into Harvard Law School. How was it going through law school at Harvard?
It was very, very challenging, particularly that first year when it is rough, because I didn't really know what to expect. I wish I had done some more homework by asking friends. I think I did it a little bit, but I didn't quite understand what I was getting myself into. And I think this is where people who have had family members just kind of come into it with a different sense of preparedness. You're reading old English for, 6-8 hours a day, and you're trying to make sense of concepts that are foreign and brand new. I thought I had a wonderful grasp of the English language, but I was, along with my peers, learning words that I had never, ever seen before.
Surprise!
I think, the school has sort of moved away from this idea that, like, look to your right, look to your left. One of you won't be here at the end of, your first term or second semester. It's not really cutthroat in that sense, but it also depends on kind of what league you're playing in, right? To back up a bit, like I said, you're reading cases, you're trying to understand how a judge came to a conclusion that he or she did. And you're trying to apply it to practical examples like today. But you don't really get to the application phase until you first sort of understand what the principle of the law is. And it took me a really long time to understand what those principles we were supposed to be getting at were. I think sometimes the idea is that you'll sort of figure it out by understanding the way the different cases are put in the book. It's kind of boring, but eventually, I learned to understand that the way cases were presented to us were for a reason. And sometimes it was just maybe more helpful for me to read the syllabus of a class and understand, okay, today we're learning about contracts. And I guess in order to form a contract, you have to have an offer. And these are the different ways offers are made: verbal, written, understood, things like that. And then I was like, okay, now these set of cases, I'm placing it in context so I understand how this is supposed to work. Essentially, a lot of it was learning how to teach yourself this stuff, and then also how to outline, how to analyze these theorems and principles as part of potential exam, how to apply that reasoning to different and new settings. So understanding how old law can be applied to new technologies. That's always what exams are going to be about. Kind of understanding and testing your ability to analyze, but also trying to see if you're spotting different issues. And then you also have to worry about your writing. So it is a lot that is thrown. And then there's a performative aspect, right? There's the Socratic method where professors are calling on you and you're like, oh my God, I'm going to get called on today. It's going to be disaster because I don't understand what's going on. Learning how to go through that. Learning how to not let those things chip away at your confidence, but to try and, do the best that you can. Something that I realized was sometimes my best is not going to be as great as my friend's best. And that's okay. Because at least my goals were not trying to be the next Supreme Court justice. And at Harvard Law, there are a subset of students that will go on to become Supreme Court justices.
Right.
And so, there are people who are going to be practicing at the pinnacle, but that does not in any way mean that it should undermine what you're trying to do. So learning to be proud for other people and, excited for them when they're shining, I think was one of the biggest things that I learned in law school, because that means that you have to have confidence in your ability to do well at what you want to do.
Right. I don't remember specifically who said it, but I think there's a psychologist that says, don't compare yourself to where somebody else is today. Compare yourself to where you are today compared to where you were yesterday.
Right.
So it's your own progress. You're not measuring yourself against somebody else's progress. They might be up or down on that same scale, but you're on your own journey and on your own trajectory.
And I think one thing that happens a lot in the law is that you learn that you will lose, and that's okay. It's not like losing as a medical doctor where you're losing a patient's life.
Right.
And I think sometimes you just, those people who have more fulfilling careers in law understand that and don't beat themselves up for that. There's always going to be a winner and there's always going to be a loser. That's okay.
Even in medicine, when we do lose a patient or have an unintended consequence like a complication, we use that as an opportunity to learn so that next time we can do better. Right. So losing is not always a bad thing. There's always an opportunity for improvement. There's always an opportunity to learn something.
Right.
I think you mentioned earlier that I think is very important in the Muslim community, especially when it comes to, professional women, is unless you come from a family that's already within that field, it's very difficult to have, that edge where you have, people in your family who've already been, I remember for me as well, in that field, whether it's law, medicine, or whatever, to give you that edge, to give you that heads up to say, this is what you should be expecting. And so they're always ahead of the curve.
And I just did not have that. And it's okay. Instead, what I have and what I perhaps tapped in a bit too late was other Muslim women or other Muslim men or other Black attorneys has really been a huge network that I've leaned on heavily to kind of get the real deal on how to advance in this space and how to present myself as an applicant and as an attorney. I think, it's never too early to start building these relationships because over time, people will be more and more candid. I was very lucky in that one of my dearest mentors is an Arab American woman who has literally kind of held my hand since my second year after, I think, kind of seeing that I was not drowning, but a little unmoored, a little shaky because that first year was rough. And I was trying to figure out, okay, I think my plans are changing because what I want to do is going to change. But what is it that I want to do? I did some immigration law one summer and I kind of realized that it wasn't a good fit for me. Because I didn't have that network in my family, I leaned on her to sort of give me the real deal. And other people, other Black women attorneys who, would come to campus sometimes and meet with the Black Law Students Association, BALSA members, and just give some straight up advice. Like one of the most powerful partners in New York City took a question from one of my friends, and the question was, I'm spending 3 to 4 hours a night reading a case, and I just feel so stupid. I don't understand what I'm reading. I'm sad that it's taking me 3 to 4 hours to read through it. And she just kind of said, well, why do you think it wouldn't take you 3 to 4 hours? Like, have you done this before? No. Do you even know what's going on? No. So take the time and don't beat yourself up because this is the first time that you're doing it. And it's something that I think really changed the way I started to approach like what I was doing at law school. I would read these cases and I'd be like, I don't understand what is going on here. And then a few months later, after I heard this woman speak, I went back and I was like, you know what? That was pretty terrible English. Like the guy was writing in the 18th century. Like it's all right that that's not how I would write it. There's no flow there. And that was because I had Justice Scalia's like opinions, which are just very accessible, very like wonderful English. It flows and
normal English.
It just is so well written. But that other case, no. And it's okay to say that was not written the best way. That's fine, And just because I can't understand it doesn't mean that I'm any less intelligent. Right. It just means that this piece of writing was not well written. Right. And once like I had the confidence to state that in my mind, things just kind of moved a lot better for me.
Yeah, it's just someone actually acknowledging your struggle.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely. And saying that it's okay, that this is how it is for everybody in the beginning. There are things now that I can do in my career that I could not do as quickly when I started out 5 years ago. There are motions that I can write now in 10 hours that would take me 40 hours in the past. So that type of speed and knowledge comes over time. And so you cannot replace hard work. You just have to do it.
And one of the things that I think affects underrepresented minorities, especially, Muslim women, because a lot of us, some of us wear a hijab, some of us don't, and some of them have the typical name. In addition to, the implicit biases and what's going on, you get that explicit bias of telling you, hey, you don't belong here. This is not for you. So
Right.
You have that compounded with the, regular emotion that everybody has of, I don't understand this. And then the imposter syndrome, I don't know if you guys openly discuss that, but that's one of the things that we're starting to discuss more and more of among women in medicine is the fact that you feel like you don't belong, you're an imposter. Until somebody comes in and says, hey, it's completely normal to feel like that. Everybody feels like that.
Right. Absolutely. It's, I think, something that plagues women, first generation law students and lawyers, which includes white men.
Everybody.
It includes a lot of people. And I think, once you see other people make mistakes or have the same questions or kind of confront the same issues that you're trying to work through, you realize that, like, hey, I had a pretty good set of questions, or hey, like my gut, my intuition was right. And this sense of confidence comes from going through this myself, right? I think that one of the things I'm really good at is looking out for other younger attorneys. And so I look over people's work and I'm catching people make similar mistakes that I did.
Right.
And I was like, wow, to think that I beat myself up so much over this when I was in their position a few years ago.
Yeah.
It was not worth any of that mental grief. I think one thing that I realized in these last 5 years of practice was that the more basic a question is, that's awesome. Because then you're kind of really hitting what the issue is, what it could be, and you're sort of framing the direction of analysis that you want to embark on. I've been really lucky to work with colleagues and with my judge that have encouraged that, because if you have the wrong framework, you can end up wasting a lot of time. And that can cost clients a lot of money because we work on a billable hour system, right?
Right.
So you're better off and your superiors are going to be happier if you ask them more basic questions straight up, as opposed to kind of embark on a journey that you didn't have to go through.
Right.
And I guess all this is going back to this idea that, like, once I realized that that was a prize aspect of my analytical skill set, that, hey, like, this was never a weakness to begin with.
All right. So I have a question now. Throughout your journey, from trying to figure out exactly what it is you wanted to do to finally, getting into law and figuring out what your weaknesses and your strengths are, what do you consider your biggest obstacle to be that you had to overcome?
Coming at a inflection point or a moment where I'm going to be making a decision on what I want my career to look like. I've been practicing for about 5 years now, and I'm a mid-level associate. And so to reach the next step of partnership, which can take probably 4 to 5 years, I need to keep delivering good, solid work product, keep up my analytical skill set, and work on always improve my writing. But I also have to kind of embark on another equally important aspect of partnership, which is understanding how the game works, understanding who the gatekeepers are, how to make those people happy, not just happy with your work, but how to make them want to go to bat for you, figuring out, who are the sponsors of this law firm, who are people that can shepherd me through partnership, who can say, hey, keep it up, or, Fatima, you're off track. Here are the 3 things you need to do to get back on track. Understanding, again, I think I have really good sense of confidence of what I bring to the table, but I think kind of understanding how to market myself internally. I think I did a bad job at internal marketing at a previous firm. I think I just left it up to, my work product or judges granting my motions in certain cases and just sort of
letting the work speak for itself. Yes.
Correct. But, there's a whole other game being played. I'd not go around to people's offices. I'd not talk up what I did. I didn't go and say, guess what I did today? I just won this case. I just did that or this. I just didn't engage in that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's a great way of doing it and there's a bad way of doing it.
Right.
But you should always be communicating your successes. And when you do lose, it's important to go around and talk to people and say, like, judge really reamed me in on this, or I didn't really quite know how to handle that questioning in deposition. How would you have handled that? Because when you do something like that, it conveys to the partners and the people you work with that she's really committed to this and she wants to do it better. So, these are things that I'm excited to kind of reflect on and take with me to the next step, because there are just an appalling lack of number of Black women seen in partnership, well, not even just senior, just like straight up partnership roles in law firms in this country. I think the number is like less than 1%, which is astonishing. So I just feel like I have a real opportunity. I love what I do. I love the practice and the type of work that I'm privileged enough to do. I think working as an attorney is a wonderful, wonderful path for me. I also think another obstacle with that is learning how not to let your work tire you. I think there was a time earlier this year, like September of 2018, where I was straight up burned out. And actually, you called me out on that. And I kind of thought about it and I was like, you know what? Yeah, I am being more irritable lately. I think I'm snapping. I don't understand why this is happening, because the only thing I was doing is work.
Is that when we were in Houston?
Yes, it was. And there were other things going on, but like for sure, just always sort of being in touch with your not just mental state,
your well-being,
but like your well-being, precisely. So having a balanced life is important. So I think those are big obstacles or just things that I'm going through.
And so if there are, young Muslim women listening to us right now, what advice would you give them if they were to want to go into law?
So you should make 2 sets of kind of mentorship circles. You should have peer mentors, so people your age that are going through the process of applying to law school or med school, going through the process of first year of law school, in that phase where you're applying to law school or in law school. And then you should have a second set of mentors who are in practice. A lot of what I've been talking about has been kind of contained to the area of private practice, but there are awesome people who practice in nonprofit law, who practice as public defenders or prosecutors. Some are judges. So if you're lucky enough to have a judge, avail themselves of that opportunity to be a mentee of them. Try and glean as much advice from these people as you can. Go to them when you have some serious issues. I have talked to people through a lot of different experiences, things that are unpleasant. But I always promise you that once you talk to people that you really trust, you're going to come up with a way to attack that problem that you're encountering. I love to hear back from people that I've talked through those problems. Like, what happened? What was the result? Like, keep people updated.
Yep.
But I think that's the number one thing that will benefit you, is just surrounding yourself with peer mentors and mentors who are in the practice of law.
Right. Wonderful. Wonderful. All right. And if there was something you could tell your younger self right now to make your journey easier, what would you tell yourself?
To not have doubted myself so much during 1L, which is that first year of law school. It was very difficult going from a place where I had a lot of self-confidence to coming to a place where I did not have that much self-confidence, and indeed had a lot of self-doubt. A little bit of doubt, a little bit of skepticism, a little bit of stress is good to kind of motivate you to get to the next level, to make sure that you're not coming off inappropriately. Kind of like humble yourself. But there's a point in which those dark thoughts, I think, can
be paralyzing.
Impede you. And exactly. I think I had serious paralysis and analysis paralysis. Yeah, I think I had a lot of that going on. Probably the second thing was like, so I felt like a lot of my career has sort of been a process of elimination. And I think I've eliminated everything and I know exactly what I want to do now. But, it kind of sucks. You're like, oh, yeah, I'm so excited to do immigration law. Oh, didn't really work out the way I wanted.
Mm-hmm.
All right, well, I'm so excited to do this now.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, didn't quite work out the way I wanted. Okay, well, I guess I'm going to do this. And yes, I think this is it. Well, maybe not. Like, I got to course correct a bit. Okay, course correcting. This isn't quite it either. All right, get back on it.
Yeah, and that's a normal process, right?
Yeah.
That's a normal process because a lot of young people stress over the fact that they don't know exactly what they want to do at a very young age, either college or, graduate school. Even in graduate school, even in law school, there's multiple different avenues. Medical school, there's, multiple different avenues. It doesn't have to be specific. And a lot of people, that causes them stress.
Right. And I always think the bravest people are the people who get off when they know it's not the right ride for them. Right. So people who quit law school, I say quit, but really people who are like, I got admitted into Harvard Law School and this ain't for me.
Right. That's a brave action to take.
Right?
Right.
I think that stuff is really important. Being in tune with yourself. Again, this idea, fake it till you make it. Okay, yeah, a little bit of it is totally accurate, but you don't want to be faking all the time. Yep. You want to work in a place where you can bring your whole self. Like you can wear hijab, you can wear jilbab, you can, be out and comfortably talk about your boyfriend or your girlfriend. I know, like, these are things that really chip at people's well-being. And when you're low, it's going to affect your clients. And like, I think that, where you really need to take a pause, because this whole practice of law, we're accountable to clients. And because of that, we're accountable to different state bars. Mm-hmm. So there is regulation in our profession, just like there is in yours. Right. But that kind of stuff, I think people don't quite grasp when they're younger. And I'm always happy to talk about these things. But yeah.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, that was a very inspiring conversation. And I hope everybody has benefited from hearing Fatima's story and experiences. We will be posting this pretty soon. So if anybody wanted to get in touch with you regarding law or pursuing, a law degree, how can they get in touch with you?
So I would say you're welcome to reach out to me on Twitter. I'm active on Twitter. I'm always tweeting, and I am a participant in law Twitter. I'm also on LinkedIn, and you can just search up Fatima Hassan Ali, and you'll find me. There's probably only one of me in this world in Houston as an attorney. So I have a little bit of uniqueness, but also Fatima is a very common name. But yes, please reach out to me. I'm happy to talk to people. I always get DMs and emails on LinkedIn, and I just call people up immediately, because that's another tip for success is like just do it immediately, because if you put it off, you're not going to putting it off. Yeah.
Great. Thank you for being available. That's one of the things that we want to accomplish here with the Professional Muslim Women podcast, is to provide, the community mentorship that, a majority of us are missing, coming from immigrant families or not having that leeway and edge in these different professions that we want to pursue. So we want to make sure that we're providing a mentorship platform for young professionals as well as young students hoping to go into these different fields. So we appreciate you for making yourself available.
Anytime, Dr. Hussein.
That's fine.
It's an honor to be part of this, and I'm excited to see the beautiful things that come out of this project. So thank you for spearheading this.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for being on the podcast today. We appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Thank you for tuning into the Professional Muslim Women podcast, the place for Muslim women to inspire and be inspired.
Please join us on our Facebook group, Professional Muslim Women, to continue the conversation and connect with Muslim women like you. And don't forget to subscribe to the podcast and drop us a like or a review.
We look forward to hearing from you soon.